Welcome to another episode of the Lazy Equity Podcast. We've got Justin joining us one more time. Thanks, mate. This time, a special guest, Ryan. Thank you very much for joining us from Strategic Advisory, a financial planning and financial advisory services based up in
Central Coast.
The Sunny Coast. Love it, mate. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we're really looking forward to hearing about what you're going to be able to unpack in terms of how to manage, assess, understand, analyze, and really structure your finances for the most it potentially could be ready. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to bringing whatever I can, in value and insights and ideas. And
I think you've already proved to us through our own efforts of seeing your work and diligence what can be proven and what can be potentially achievable to a lot of people that are trying to invest in and doing it smartly through understanding their finances properly, because I think that's the biggest part, right? Just, I know you're actually already a client, and that's fantastic. It's proof to the pudding. Why don't you give us a rundown, I guess, of where you came from, Ryan, and give us an understanding of the lay of the land and why you do what you do?
It's a big question. I like it. So where I came from, look, I'll be fast and quick, but I'll give you the full history and timeline. So I started out at uni. I was in a room with a lot of salespeople, a lot of marketers, and then over in the corner there was all the accountants. And I was meant by human design, I was meant to be in sales, in marketing, in that sort of space. But
I feel comfortable there.
Yeah, I feel comfortable. Like I'm an extrovert, but then I was like, there's untapped potential over on this other market. There's a lot of accountants that they're not communicators by nature, and I went, I'm going to go down that route, because at the end of the day, an accountant or a financial planner, they're the closest to making or breaking a business, and they're the closest to money. So I went, this works purposefully, but I also think I can have an edge in that market. So went and did accounting, did tax. Did your CPA and all those bits and pieces. And then I went into top tier accounting and tax firms in Sydney, North Sydney, et cetera, became a partner of a big reputable firm, KP or Kelly Partners.
That's right. And which Kelly Partners was the one?
It was at Erina. So I joined as like a intermediate accountant, but then made it to senior and then partner within a couple of years, and sort of took that partnership role on the Central Coast where I reside. So that's kind of, 10 years ago, and then I left that firm.
That's partnership quite quickly.
Yeah.
That's well done.
Yeah, so got again right attitude, right motives, right mindset, et cetera, and then I left there with my reasoning being I wanted to really focus on advisory, wanted to focus on property, wanted to focus on consulting, those things that I just think are very much missing in the industry.
Was there a point where you realised that was missing? And
a lot of compliance. So most firms, big or small, they're compliance firms. They do tax returns, they do bookkeeping, they do basic accounting. They're transactional, historical creatures by nature, most of these firms, because they're built from accountants that think like accountants. Yeah. And that's where I just knew, because you've got these intrinsic values and beliefs built on sales and transformation and those other paradigms, where I went, it doesn't feel right. It feels like there's something missing here as a proposition. So then I set up my own firm, or I did a bit of a financial planning stint. Yep. Just doing financial planning with a guy that was very aligned to me. He was very in the coaching space, very in the transformation space, avid property investor, had done developments. I really found the mentor that I kind of wanted in that space. And again, it's just an evolution piece. You hang around these people, you hang around these businesses, you love it, but then you eventually you kind of outgrow it, because you've got your own creation, you've got your own way that you sort of see things, which has kind of then led us to our alignment point why we're here today.
Yeah, I think you hit on the head there. You've got your own way of seeing things. Was there a specific thing that you saw that was missing with property in this space, and was there
absolutely
a point of really trying to get that across into the planning, because it's not really as recognized as it potentially could be?
Oh, it's almost like it's not a timeline. You've got a scale. you've got, like I said, accountants and tax agents, etc., that are the closest to someone making wealth or not making wealth, making a business, not making a business. And they kind of hold the key here. But more often than not, most of them aren't focused on real wealth creation strategy.
Yeah.
Then you start to move along the trajectory and you've got financial planners, and financial planners are about the betterment of someone's wealth and family's wealth. Then you start to move along and you've got buyer's agents, for example, that are really focused on making wealth for people, but some of them don't have the right motivations, or there's backhand agreements, or there's just off the plan property purchasing, the whole deal. And then you keep going along. You keep going along, and then you've got buyers agents like yourselves that are all about like doing the right thing, buying high performing property, getting real outcomes, getting, lazy equity to make heaps of equity, and then compounding that position. I think I just kept seeing that there was way more value along that sequence to give, to the point now that, we're still testing that, and we're going, with some of the brokers that we work with, the little triangle, buyers agent, broker and good advisor, we're starting to find that there's easier ways to get finance, or there's easier way to get equity faster, or there's ways to sort of push the boundaries to create wealth faster.
Yeah.
And to address a lot of the barriers and the blockages, etc. So that yearning or that creation is kind of what I'm built for. Like not being a cowboy or doing things wrong, but, but
I don't think you can be, because you're responsible for with your license. Exactly. Your license is probably one of the strictest in the industry for financing.
Absolutely.
And you have to be responsible for that. No, go for it.
Absolutely. One of the things you spoke about is that spectrum as well. Every day we talk to people, they're being advised by an accountant, financial advisor to buy an off-the-plan apartment, house and land packages. We have to constantly tell people they're there to reduce your taxes, not to build your wealth. They don't really understand the ability to be able to leverage. And I think one thing I loved about your concept as well, I thought at the start of this year I was stuck with my own portfolio.
Yep.
And pretty quickly now I'm able to buy another 4 properties.
Yep.
Something you really spoke about was leverage without limitations, or leverage with limited restrictions. That really
I've heard this more and more recently, and I'm quite keen to understand that because Justin's been using it a bit in the office, and I'd love to hear more about it.
It came up. I never had it. It wasn't something I copy and pasted from a textbook and went leverage without limitations. I heard it from Hormozy. I'm going with that. It wasn't that. It
does sound like a bit of a Hormozy line, doesn't it?
It sounds like, and I'll go put it out and he'll copy it. But the point is, we were sitting there having a high energy conversation, and you were talking about like how do people make real wealth and real wealth fast, and what differentiates someone that can and someone that can't. And it is leverage without limitation. And back to the spectrum we talked about, a lot of the accountants or sometimes the brokers or the financial planners, they're creating blockages. They're creating limitation to people making wealth, because they're going, your servicing isn't that, or there's no funding for this, or you're not ready, or whatever the reasons are. It's usually caught up with that professional or that individual. Leverage without limitation is about you can do pretty crazy things if you've got the right people in your corner around this property acquisition piece. Like you should be able to almost contra or outweigh or outperform the limitations by, if you can't get finance for a property, there's always ways you can work around your position and what's promoted to the broker. There's always different styles of lending. There's always, with buyer's agents, there's some that say there's not enough of equity, and then there's those that do the work and get the deals. Yep. So there's always a way around the limitation.
I mean, you just touched on an example there, but is there more that you can expand on that saying, the limitations being the thing that holds you back, but there is always a way around it. So can you give us an example that potentially happens quite frequently with your clients?
Did a post yesterday. Didn't go crazy on social media, but it was coming from good intent, and it was around, I'll tell the story. You know what I mean?
The story.
It's ironic because then it's coming from the story was, true story, last week, got a guy, good client of mine, doing the work, doesn't have all the reason to be winning, but he's doing the work, and he's done the work for about 12 or 18 months. And he sat there and said to me, it was around this development that he's got. He goes, Ryan, I've been trying to get people invested in my project. I've been trying, it's taking too long. It's not going to happen. I don't have enough reps on the board. It's just not going to happen. And I said, you're lying. And he goes, what are you talking about? Luckily, he's not an egotistical guy. I said, you are lying. With all due respect, you are lying to yourself, and you are making an assumption, and it is a limitation. That's what it is. And he goes, how can you prove that? And I said, because I know for a fact there is a person that is interested in investing in that project because of the person you are, the builder you are, and the demeanor that you've got. And he went, wow. It was the limitation. The biggest limitation in anything you do, whether it's buying property with you, Jans, whether it's getting funding to buy property, whether it's seeing an accountant or a financial planner, is it's going to be the limitation of the person, or it's going to be the limitation of the person providing the guidance.
Yeah.
That's where the biggest limitations come from. There's so much of this, good debt, bad debt. And there's so many people promoting in this day and age that debt is bad. That is the biggest lie or the biggest limitation I've ever heard. Using debt for lemons is bad debt.
Yes.
Using debt for credit cards is bad debt. Using debt for high-performing assets is the smartest thing you will do. Because even if you couldn't service the thing in 12 months, you just made X amount of equity, which still puts you in a better wealth position.
Yeah. I remember the context in which we kind of had this conversation just a couple of months ago as well. I live in Double Bay, on the border of Double Bay and Bellevue Hill. So with Bellevue Hill, I couldn't quite understand how people are only on about 500 to $1 million, but they're living in $24 million houses. I'm like, that just doesn't stack up. How does that make sense?
Yeah.
You were saying it's leveraged with limited restrictions. And when you really kind of broke it down, you're saying you either need a huge amounts of income. And it's not the income is where you make your money. It gives you access to leverage. It gives you access to other people's money in which you can invest. And obviously that multiplies. That's where you make your real money. Or you've got something to tap into. So you were saying if somebody has a $10 million house in Vaucluse with no income, there's still lenders out there that will allow you to borrow against that. And it gives you the ability to leverage. And that's just what really kind of catapults people, is being able to leverage, use other people's money. And then obviously you're making a much higher profit at a much higher starting point. Really kind of tapped into, it's like, we've got to use those tools to obviously keep trying to find and get yourself into a category, whether it's high income or have a lot of net worth to kind of fall back onto. People might say, I don't have so much money to invest now. If you keep working, keep building your net worth, making the right investments, eventually you're going to have that pot to tap into. Lender's going to allow you to borrow against that. And that's where all the restrictions start to fall off. And now you can really start to exponentially build your wealth.
I think that's that's perfectly articulated, but it outlines one of the hugest limitations that I see with even intelligent investors, right, that have made good money, whether it's in business, etc., is they go, I've got an unencumbered asset, right, and I don't have any income or any wage because they might be living off something, right? I don't have the ability to use that, and it's the biggest myth ever. Yeah, the banks won't, or yes, you won't be able to do it in your own name because there's consumer lending restrictions, but at the end of the day, where do private lenders make all their money?
Yeah.
It's asset finance. So again, someone that had a $10, $15 million property, they can sit there and do nothing with it, and there's just like the natural appreciation of that property, okay? Or they could take an LVR position of it on the asset, right, to some degree, put it into really good stock or really good opportunities. That ends up making certain amounts of money and do it conservatively. Don't have to take your loan to 80%. You might end up taking it to 20 or 25 or whatever it may be. But then in 5 years' time of strategically doing that, you've got double the asset value.
Totally. Yeah, that's that leverage game again. There you go. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? I'm not going to push that it's ignorance, right? I'm going to push its lack of education.
That's exactly what it is. It's not the cookie cutter that exists, and it doesn't exist. You know, you're in this position and you've opened this company for a reason. Your job, a lot of your days are, I would assume, occupied by meeting clients and advising, because it's an advisory, right?
Yep.
What are you going to do? You can't advise the same thing over and over again. You're advising strategically for that person's position and their profile.
Yes.
So it cannot be assumed that every single position is the same. It should not be a cookie cutter approach.
Yes.
And so for the right strategic advisors, or there we go, strategic advisor. I think for the right financial advisor, it's so important to understand where an individual is coming from, where they want to go to, and what they have in their toolbox, essentially. And we always, we like to look at the things from a toolbox perspective, because we do know that, a higher income earner has higher income, so they can get a lot better borrowing from a bank.
Yes.
But we also know that a low-income earner is going to get way worse. So what's more important for them to continue to purchase higher yielding properties, because they need that to support them for those further lends that once those equities have been created from the time of growth, at least at that stage, hopefully the rent's gone up by that stage, in what we would position them in to be a high yielding property in the start, is going to then support them to pull that equity out at that time. Whereas a high net worth earner doesn't need that. They can go with a low yield. If they're capitalizing on equity as much as they can, and potentially they're only looking for 10% gain because they can afford a $3, $4, $5, $6 million portfolio, it's still 10% on that value, which is phenomenal within that time frame.
Yes.
But if you're a lower income earner and you really need to focus on that yield supporting you for the next time you want to buy or you can buy because of the equity that's available, it's really important to then find the value of the asset that's going to support you for that particular goal.
Yes.
And if that is going to create you, let's say 20% equity gains, fantastic, but it's going to probably be on a lower value because you don't have the lending capability. So 20% on a $300,000 property, it's not going to be pretty, but it's going to create you 60K.
Yeah.
And that's going to get you another bit closer to your next purchase while you also have the yielding asset supporting you for that lend at that time. And so it's opportunistic. It's not a cookie cutter approach, and it has to be assessed individually. And I think that's what we have in common with you guys, is that we understand what's required there.
When you were talking, then the thing that kept going off in my head is it's about variability, it's about options, it's about abstract thinking. And when you have a firm like yourselves that you can think like that and you can think around the barriers or the limitations or the blockages or the variables or whether they're asset rich or they're income rich or poor on either, that makes a great advisor, I believe. It's not generalizing, it's not being cookie cutter, it's not saying, hey, we'll just do this and do the same thing. And I love that about you gents, and that's why we are so aligned, is that you are real property high-performing advisors. You know, you're about not just doing resi, or not just doing commercial, or not just doing low point, or not doing high point, or not doing this sort of person or that sort of person, or this mindset or that mindset. It's about working with the person to extract as much equity, as much wealth to get them ahead. And I think that's where we're in. I'll find solutions. I'll find solutions to barriers. We've done it personally together. I almost feel obliged to, we like working together, but I almost feel obliged that if you don't have this awareness piece on what you could even do, that is like, it's crazy now, you got some crazy plans, it's like, I'm doing the wrong thing. And I think so many people need that guidance. They need to go, let's not work on the problem, let's work on how we're making the opportunity, or how we're getting around the limitation.
It's something I really liked, I picked up right away, is the ability to be agile. So the goal might stay the same, it's just how you get there might change. And they say a statement closes the mind, but a question opens the mind. So it's not, I can't afford it, it's how can I afford it?
Yes.
That's why I really like sitting down with you guys. Is you see, with the generic financial advisors that map out a 30-year plan, you have one extra child, the property grows an extra 100 grand, the whole thing becomes redundant. It's hard to plan more than 2 properties ahead. You've got to constantly keep thinking what's the next move ahead. Not everything needs to be bought in a trust. Some should be in personal name, but it's also a few steps ahead. We always get asked the question, should I buy in a trust? We say to people, typically buy it first few in their personal name to get the negative gearing benefits, but you still need serviceability for at least one more property in your personal name, and you can set up a trust. The trust takes out the debt, not you. If it washes its own face, the rent covers everything, doesn't take away from your personal serviceability. But it's those things where they just need somebody to kind of guide them a little bit better so they don't use up all their serviceability, then they're stuck, and it becomes, their options do come a little bit lower. There's always options out there, but they just become a little bit smaller.
I think, you're right. I think it's all a bigger picture of really understanding that it's a portfolio that you're building. It's not property that you're collecting, another term that you like to use a lot. Don't be a property collector, be a property investor. You can't build a portfolio by collecting property. You can only do it by investing in them. And you've got to do it properly.
I think that's okay. That's such a good word, though, and it's such a good word that most people. So back to limitation, and I'll revert back, but it's either they're limited on what they can do by using that leverage, right? Or they are collecting, and sometimes you collect antiques that need to be divested, right? And I love that about you. It's not always about let's just get property. It's let's always have a high performance to every property that's in our portfolio.
This is a difficult one for us sometimes because it's a trade and a quality that I wouldn't even say a quality, but it's a trade of the properties that you buy, and you know how they perform because of the properties that they are inside the markets that they're located in. It's a difficult one for us because we know that sometimes the worst property inside the market, I wouldn't say the worst necessarily, but there's a lot of characteristics around properties that are not favorable to a new buyer. And we would have clients that come on board, and quite commonly, they don't like the assets that we present to them until we explain to them why it is the right asset in that market. It needs to make median and logical sense. I say median and logical because for us, anything above median is not logical, and anything on median or below makes sense. It has to be inside a market where the median is going to be, or anything above the median is going to be pulling it up in value. Typically, anything below median in value is also going to be typically below median in quality because it's going to be a lower price, it's going to be a lower quality, and that's just how it is. People like fancy and new, and a lot of our clients live in fancy and new because they are strong income earners. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And so they live in nice areas, they have nice things, and it's a difficult, I think, message to give across in a short amount of time to our clients, that it's not always about it looking great, it's about it performing strongly. And that's a difficult conversation to have sometimes. Going into that space of speaking about setting up a mindset and a mind frame around that, and I think that's probably something that you're very well experienced in as well.
I built awareness on how to attack that through enough psychology and sales experience. And what I framed it as, and you'll like this one because you hang on the sayings, right? And I made it for myself again. It was, and you said the word before, why. It's the why is the ROI. Now, there's two parts of the brain, you know, that there's the right side and the left side, and the right side's very creative and the left side's very analytical, okay? And people buy the emotion, they back it up with logic, right? And the why is emotion and the ROI is logic. So if you want to articulate the why to a customer, what we want to do is we want to give them the why, e.g. it doesn't have to be below the median to be the best opportunity, or it does, or whatever it may be. But the ROI is where you articulate the value. So more often clients go to me, no, Ryan, I would prefer have $1 million sitting in my business account for safeguard right now. And I say, I respect what you're saying and I validate you and all the rest of it. But that $1 million making you 5%, right? Versus that $1 million making you 5x because you leveraged it without limitation in a really good high performing property. That is the best sustainable solution for your business to diversify right now, versus the riskiest, which is keeping it in cash. The point is, there was why in that, but there was ROI in that. And when you articulate the ROI, the recipient goes, shit, thanks for telling me. So that's how I've had to coach, or I've had to consult, is go, opportunity cost. You can do this, this, or this. That's the value on that. That's the value on that. That's the value on that. Property, this market, this one's more expensive by $300K, right? It's well over the median, but the opportunity cost in the next 3 years is that this is going to double based on these factors and the level of scarcity, et cetera, in the market. That person goes, wow, thanks for telling me. So it's all about insight, but ROI, why and ROI are always what I use to trigger that insight and to enhance it being received.
I like that. The why is the ROI.
Yeah, and it just sticks in my head. Every time I go, I really think we need to do this, and I'm like, give them the evidence, give them the ROI, give them the ROI, give them the ROI. And as soon as you do that, that analytical part of the brain goes tick.
Yeah.
And then they go back to their partner and they go, no, we have to do it because of this.
Yeah.
And it's factual evidence.
Absolutely. Especially with the leveraging. When you're putting, a deposit down on a property, you're still using 80% of not your money to buy the value, at least 80%. Sometimes it's more. Yeah. That is such a powerful tool, another tool in your toolkit.
It's huge.
And there's a lot of people that want to only put down a 10% deposit and go down the LMI route, and they have this qualm against it, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's just another tool. It's another tactic. What is it right for you, and can it work for you, and is it going to stop you? And if it's not going to stop you, can you support that LMI, which almost every single time it's a yes, because what's a cup of coffee a week going to cost you, because that's the expense of the loan term.
It's more leveraged. Like simple Y and ROI numbers here, right? We'll do 100K, right? Really simple numbers here. Cool. This is not financial advice. You know the whole scheme. Right? $100,000 in the business, earning the 5% cash, right? 100K, or $5,000. Okay. Cool. 100K on a 90% LVR on a 500-600K property, because that's all you can get. You got the 100K in. Okay. Yeah. You got 100K in. You're backfilling it by 400 or 500K of bank debt, right? At a nominal interest. We'll call it 5% interest. That property, high performing property, right? 20%. Market 20% easy. You've doubled your money.
There you go.
You've 20x your money. Versus it was sitting in the account, right?
Well, you've 100x'd your input.
Exactly, you've 100x your return on capital. Yeah. Period. So you can see the two opportunities here. Yeah. And my point again is, instead of putting 20% in, if you put 10% in, you're more hyper leveraged. Yeah. Because go to another asset and then average out your law of performance.
One decision versus another decision is a $95,000 loss. That's the reality there.
100%. No, absolutely.
Put that into a picture.
Yeah. Absolutely. And doing this sort of stuff, like consciously and performancely, if that was a word, right?
We'll take it.
Doing it, there is leverage without limitation. The debt isn't the problem. The leverage isn't the problem. It all comes down to the investor's agency and being able to use lazy equity to make real money based on high-performing assets.
I remember, I think it was a couple of months ago, where we sat down, yourself, Kurt, my broker, Jeff. Obviously, with that, guys, this is your situation right now. You can buy 3 properties, and my LMI, I think, was about 13,000.
Capitalised too, not paid in cash.
100% as well. So 3 properties, LMI was about 13,000. Jeff, the broker, came back and said, we can actually have another option where you can buy a 4th property, but LMI goes up 10 grand. And we kind of thought about it for a little bit. You guys said, this is a pretty easy choice. You're paying an extra 10 grand to get into a whole nother property. Let's say that property grows 100 grand, which is pretty conservative. You have 10x that LMI that you paid, and you're never even going to see that LMI. It's just going to go on the back of the loans, coffee a week. But by getting to one more property, therefore now you're making 10x that. And it's just that ability to be okay with that if it's making you money, it's a good thing.
And the big thing that doesn't get addressed usually is the big thing starting with T, and it's time. The old time in the market piece, right? If you didn't take the LMI and you didn't get the property, and the property goes up 200K, what's the dumb decision? What's the dumb decision?
Yeah, 100%.
But no one's educating. So no one's telling the benefit of LMI, the benefit of leverage, the benefit of leverage without limitation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's another thing that we struggle with again, is that whole conditioning around why the property is right. Every time a decision takes longer to make, you're missing out on another 2.5% return or 2% return.
Yeah, 10 grand a month, yeah.
And look at how fast the market's moving.
I know. And that's literally the numbers that we're in.
Like
so it's just, it kills us sometimes when we see what people are missing out on. Join us next week on the Lazy Equity Podcast for part 2 of our conversation about how leveraging fuels legacy with Ryan from Strategic Advisory.